It was the first big snow of the season, and April was thrilled. Now it felt like the holiday season was here, and she loved the holidays. April was a big planner. She always hosted her parents and cousins at her house. She would decorate for a month before Thanksgiving and before Christmas, too, putting her tree up the day after Thanksgiving. The more people, the merrier, she always thought. She'd invite coworkers and single friends, too. Now it was snowing, and April could feel that thrill in her tummy. She hated to admit it, but she started listening to Christmas music around the 1st of November. In the winter we can build a snowman, she sang along with the radio as she drove along the road. There wasn't another person in sight. Even better, she thought. Fresh snow, Christmas music, a trunk full of new decorations. She was really going to kick it up a notch this year. Make her own wreaths and napkin holders and place cards. Walking in a winter wonderland. She didn't care if she was off tune. No one was listening. Her cell phone buzzed, and she was waiting for an important email from work. She reached over to the passenger seat by unhooking her seatbelt. Just for a second, she thought, and grabbed her phone. As she opened the email, she looked back up, and there, in front of her, was a dog, just standing in the road, staring at her, too afraid to move. April turned her wheel left and felt the car slide. She turned it right, and the back of her car began to fishtail. She tried her brakes, but that made things worse, and April hit a tree. She heard the crash, the sound of broken glass. The last thought she would remember was, "My seatbelt!" April opened her eyes. She was freezing cold. It was dark out, so she knew that some time had passed. She wasn't in pain and didn't seem to be bleeding, but she couldn't see very well in this lighting. Off in the distance, she saw a house with lights on, so she decided to walk to the home. She planned to see if she could use their phone, call for some help. So cold, she thought as she walked down the road. Still no other vehicles. She turned to walk up the driveway. The house was quaint. A little cottage. Candles in the windows. Decorated for Thanksgiving, with a wreath on the door and a little turkey sculpture on the porch. My kind of people, she thought. The yellow glow from the house felt warm and inviting as she knocked on the door. A middle-aged woman answered. She was dressed in a dark gray pencil skirt, 2-inch heels, a white button-up top, and a pink sweater. Her husband followed. He was wearing casual dress pants, a button-up shirt, a bow tie, and a plaid sweater. There was a dog between them, an Irish setter. "Hello?" the woman said as a question. "Are you all right, dear?" she said, pointing to April's forehead. April must be bleeding after all, she thought. "Ma'am, I've just had a car accident up the road." April gestured with her hand. The man leaned out of the doorway to look past April. The woman said, "Oh, sweetie, please come in. Spencer, get this poor child a blanket. She's ice cold." The man walked away, taking the dog. "Please, come in. Take a seat. Let me look at your head, dear," said the woman kindly. April was glad that she'd come to this house. The man came back with a blanket and a hot cup of coffee. "Cream or sugar?" he asked. "No, thank you. Black is fine," she said, as she took both the blanket and the coffee. Oh, the cup felt good in her hands. She took a sip, and it felt hot in her mouth. "Thank you so much." April trailed off, hoping the woman would give her name. "Oh, Edith, dear, and this is my husband, Spencer." "And our dog, Jackson," said the man. "Isn't that right, boy? You're Jackson." The dog's body wiggled in the excitement of hearing his name. "Do you mind if I use your phone?" asked April. "Oh, I called a tow truck if that's what you're wanting to do," said Spencer. "Yes, thank you, sir," she said. April took a look around the room. The yellow light reflected off several panes of stained glass. April loved stained glass. In fact, this was April's ideal home. The decorations were beautiful, not tacky. The furniture warm and inviting. Hardwood tables with fresh flowers. Daisies in fall colors. April made a mental note of that. She thought that would make a great addition to her Thanksgiving table. "What's your name, dear?" asked Edith. "Oh, my goodness. I'm so sorry. That was rude of me. My name is April. April Duncan." "It's nice to meet you, April," Spencer replied as Jackson jumped onto the couch next to her. "You haven't been rude at all. In fact, I should get you something for your head." And off Spencer went. Jackson placed his head on April's lap. "I hope he's not bothering you," stated Edith. "Oh, no, not at all. I love dogs. I had an Irish setter when I was a child." "Oh? What was the dog's name?" "You know, I can't for the life of me remember," said April. And she couldn't. Why couldn't she? She searched her memory and it just wasn't there. "Well, dear, you do have quite the bump on your head. I imagine that you'll remember soon enough." "Yes," said April. She felt her head, and there was a rather large bump. Spencer came back into the room with a warm washcloth and placed it on April's head. "Oh," said April. The tow truck? Did they say when they'd be here?" "Yes. They said they're quite busy, and it could be several hours. Do you need an ambulance?" "No, I don't think so." And then Edith broke in. "Spencer, dear, the girl just needs to rest. Put her feet up until the truck gets here. Would you please start a fire?" "Oh," said April, "a fire would be lovely." When she was small, she'd visit her grandparents' home in the country, and she always asked them to light a fire, even in the summer. She just loved the smell and the feeling of warmth that only a crackling fire could bring. It always made her feel safe. "Yes, of course. Great idea," said Spencer, as he began to gather several pieces of wood. "So, April, tell me about yourself." "Well, I'm 24. I live in the city, but I found that the best place to buy holiday decorations that aren't mass-produced and have a certain kind of charm are the places out here in the country, the mom-and-pop stores, vintage shops, that type of thing. So I made my way out here, and that's when the snow began. Just my luck," she chuckled. "Oh, I do love to decorate," said Edith. "My granddaughter does too. We always decorate together. She is really the one with the talent. It's amazing, really. From such a young age, she just knew how to put a table together and make it look gorgeous and inviting. That is a real talent, you know." "Well, I'm glad to know you think so. I love it. How old is your granddaughter?" "Well, I suppose she's about your age now," said Spencer. "Wow," said Edith. "Time flies, doesn't it, honey?" "Yes, it does, dear," he replied. "We don't get to see her much these days," said Spencer. "Yes, she's moved," said Edith. "Gosh, I'm so tired," yawned April. "Put your feet up, sweetheart," suggested Edith. So April did. She laid back onto the couch, and Edith covered her with a blanket. April could hear the wind kick up now. It was howling outside. The fire was enchanting, and April fell asleep watching it. A while later, April began to wake up. She was disoriented and didn't know where she was at first. She felt groggy and sleepy. The room was lit by the light of the fire, and she could make out that Edith was in her rocking chair knitting, Spencer and a lazy boy reading a newspaper, with Jackson at his feet. "Oh, Jackson," April thought. "I've missed you, boy." What? What was she thinking? That bump on her head. It was making her vision blurry now, and... "Grandma?" April said out loud. "Yes, dear," replied Edith. Spencer put the newspaper on his lap and looked at her softly. "Grandpa?" Yes, April. Wait. What? What is happening? What is going on? What is wrong with me? Screamed April in her head. Edith stood up, slowly, and knelt down beside April's head, placing her hand on her forehead. Spencer had stood up too and was now at the foot of the couch. Jackson? Asked April. The dog bounded over and licked her face. Jackie, is that you, boy? Again, slobbery licks, and April put up her hand. Are you remembering, sweetheart? Asked Edith. Remembering? What? What is this? What is happening? I think maybe I do need an ambulance. Shh. There, whispered Edith. Everything was all right. Shh, April. April looked in the woman's eyes. Grandma? And then to Spencer's. Grandpa? Spencer chuckled. Yes, April Flowers. It's me. April Flowers. Only her grandfather used that nickname. April sat up. Edith embraced her. It's okay, April. Shh. You're okay. You're in good hands now, said Spencer. What is going on? Your accident, dear. Edith trailed off. My accident? Asked April, while she frantically searched her brain for an answer to what was happening to her. Her grandparents? Her dog? Was she unconscious? In a coma? Having a bad dream? Then suddenly she remembered. My seatbelt. My seatbelt. A vision. Her memory flashed before her eyes. April remembered the sudden stop of her car, the momentum of her body flying from her seat, the force in which she hit the windshield and the cracking sound as she went through it, the thump, the split second of pain as she hit the tree. As she hit the tree, she thought again. She shot her eyes up and looked at Edith. Grandma, she cried. You're dead. Yes, my dear. Am I? She trailed off. Then she was gone. Gone from the house, gone from the warm fire, gone from seeing her grandmother's eyes. She was back in the snow, but this time she was looking at her car. Her decorations scattered all through the snow, her body lying limp and mangled, the blood turning the pristine snow a crimson red, soaking the area around her. The siren off in the distance. Let's go, dear, Edith whispered in her ear. Jackson barking and Spencer putting his arms around her shoulders. Okay, she whispered. And there was darkness in the woods, just as there had been at 4:34 p.m., the time of the accident, according to the stopped hands on the watch April Duncan had been wearing on her wrist.